The water wasn't supposed to be there. Not like that. Not roaring through steel tunnels like a beast released from beneath the earth. It didn't smell like clean water. It reeked of oil and blood and sewage. And it was rising. Fast. One moment, people sat against the cold concrete walls, clutching children, hoping the bombs above would miss them again. The next, the floor was gone. There was just current, chaos, screams in the dark. It started near the Friedrichstrasse station. A strange hum echoed through the tunnel walls, followed by a sudden gust of foul air. Then the surge, rushing up from the southern lines with impossible speed. Entire sections of the Berlin U-Bahn flooded in minutes, not with a leak, not with a rupture, with a flood engineered coldly, intentionally, by men far removed from the drowning. May 1st, 1945. Berlin was already rubble. The Third Reich was in its final convulsive death throes. Soviet troops had pushed deep into the city. The streets above were a gauntlet of craters, barricades, and bodies. Flames crawled up the skeletons of buildings. The last defenders, old men, Hitler youth, foreign volunteers, clung to delusions and machine guns. And beneath it all, in the vast network of subway tunnels and underground stations, civilians gathered like ghosts. Thousands of them, women carrying babies, men too wounded to walk, hospital staff wheeling stretchers between platforms. The underground was their final shelter, deep, reinforced, and forgotten by the chaos above. But in the bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, orders were still being given, and one of those orders turned the tunnels into tombs. The official story would later be muddled, twisted, even erased. German records from those last days were inconsistent, some burned, some buried. Soviet accounts were fragmentary at best, but survivors remembered. Survivors never forget the taste of that water or the sound it made when it reached the first children. The U-Bahn had long been a point of pride for Berlin, a sleek, modern subway system that ran beneath the city like veins. During the war, it became a critical air raid shelter. As the Red Army closed in, the wounded were moved underground, along with civilians fleeing the bombardment. Entire hospitals were relocated to tunnels. Some trains were repurposed into triage wards, others into morgues. At the same time, the Wehrmacht and SS began using the tunnels for their own purposes: retreat routes, ammunition storage, communications lines. By late April, the U-Bahn was no longer just a place of refuge. It was a contested, crumbling nerve center for a city on the verge of extinction. Then came the decision, unconfirmed, unrecorded, but undeniable. The Landwehr Canal, which passed above several U-Bahn routes, had long been connected to the tunnel system via pumps and valves. On the night of April 30th or early May 1st, one or more of those valves were opened. To this day, no one can say with certainty who gave the order. Some historians suggest it was the SS, hoping to flood the tunnels to slow the Soviet advance. Others believe it was a panicked attempt to destroy military communications equipment before capture. Still others point to sheer incompetence. But there's one certainty. No warning was given to the people inside. The first to die were already lying down. In the stretch between Muckernbrücke and Hallisches Tor, makeshift hospitals had been established in the train cars. The wounded, many without legs, arms, or eyes, were placed on wooden pallets beside the tracks. Some had 4 drips rigged from wire. Some were unconscious. The water swept through them in a single wave. Doctors and nurses screamed, trying to lift people, but the water was waist-high in seconds, then chest-high. Then it swallowed the lights. At the same time, civilians in the southern tunnels heard the roar, like a train that never came. Then the cold hit their ankles. They tried to run, but many stations had stairways blocked by rubble. Some exits had been sealed. By the time the water reached Anhalter Bahnhof, it was dragging bodies. One survivor, a woman named Clara M., recalled carrying her son on her shoulders. She was 23, her son barely 3. She remembered slipping once, nearly going under, the water pulling at her boots. She made it up a rusted maintenance ladder near Potsdamer Platz. Her son survived. Her husband, last seen helping an elderly man up a broken escalator, was never found. The worst-hit stretch was the north-south tunnel, the Nord-Süd-Bahn. The design of the system created a deadly siphon. Once water entered, it had nowhere to go but forward. Those deeper in the tunnels had more time, but not much. Water found every slope, every dip. It pressed into every sealed station and every train car. People banged on metal doors, some tried to swim. A few made it to air pockets in the ceilings, only to suffocate when the oxygen gave out. When the Soviets reached the U-Bahn entrances, they found horror. At the Wilhelmplatz station, smoke and steam poured from the stairwells. Bodies floated near the entrance, faces bloated and gray. Some were still warm. Inside, entire families were found pressed against walls, as if the water had cornered them. In the days that followed, the Red Army engineers began pumping water from the tunnels. What emerged was ghastly. The stench of rot, clothing snagged on rail ties, corpses in tangled piles. Many had no identification. Their papers had turned to pulp, their names lost to the tide. Goebbels was already dead by then. He and his wife had poisoned their children and themselves on May 1st. Hitler had shot himself the day before. The regime was over, but the cover-up had only begun. In post-war interrogations, surviving Nazi officers either denied knowledge of the flooding or insisted it had been caused by Soviet bombing. For decades, that version of events stood as the official story, but the survivors refused to forget. In 1946, a group of Berliners, mostly women, petitioned the Soviet authorities to erect a plaque at the Friedrichstrasse station to commemorate the victims. They were ignored. In 1950, a Soviet-backed report again blamed Allied bombs. No memorial was built. In the West, the incident was ignored. The Berlin U-Bahn disaster didn't fit the narrative of heroic resistance or clean endings. It was a slow drowning, an institutional murder with no name attached. To this day, no one knows how many died. Estimates range from 500 to over 5,000. The truth may never be known. Records were lost, testimonies were silenced, but the tunnels remember. In the decades since, Berlin rebuilt. The U-Bahn resumed operation. Trains again glide through the same tunnels. Riders tap phones, read newspapers, sip coffee. Few know they're passing over graves. Once, a conductor on the U6 line swore he saw handprints in the condensation on his windshield, just for a moment. He never spoke of it again. Urban legends grew. Whispers of cries in the dark, of stations where the lights flicker for no reason. Most Berliners scoff at such tales, but some glance at the tunnel walls as they pass, uneasy. Because it wasn't a bombing. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice, a decision made in a bunker by men who had already abandoned their people, and the ones who paid the price were the last to believe in the safety of the system. The mothers, clutching infants, the nurses who stayed behind, the wounded, the lost. Their names are not carved into stone. There is no museum for them, just cold tunnels, and the sound of water, long receded, but never truly gone. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.